Your shoes are out at the toes. Your wives and little ones are cold and hungry. You have been robbed and enslaved for years. And now Billy Sunday comes to you and tells you to be good and patient and trust to justice. What silly trash to tell to men whose goodness and patience has cried out to a deaf world. I could see the tears in the eyes of those poor fellows. They looked up into my face as much to say, "My God, Mother, have you brought us a ray of hope?" Someone screamed, "Organize us, Mother." Then they all began shouting, "Organize us, organize us. March over to that dark church on the corner, and I will give you the obligation," said I. The men started marching. In the dark, the spies could not identify them. "You can't organize those men," said the board member, "because you haven't the ritual." "The ritual, hell," said I. "I'll make one up." "They have to pay $15 for a charter," said he. "I will get them their charter," said I. "Why, these poor wretches haven't 15 cents for a sandwich. All you care about is your salary, regardless of the destiny of these men." On the steps of the darkened church, I organized those men. They raised their hand and took the obligation to the union. "Go home from this meeting," said I. "Say nothing about being a union man. Put on your overalls in the morning, take your dinner buckets, and go to work in the mines, and get the other men out." They went to work. Every man who had attended the meeting was discharged. That caused the strike, a long, bitter, cruel strike. Bullpens came, flags came, the militia came, more hungry, more cold, more starving, more ragged than Washington's army that fought against tyranny were the miners of the Kanawha Mountains, and just as grim, just as heroic, men died in those hills that others might be free. One day, a group of men came down to Exdale from Red Warrior Camp to ask me to come up there and speak to them. 36 men came down in their shirt sleeves. They brought a mule and a buggy for me to drive in, with a little miner's lad for a driver. I was to drive in the creek bed, as that was the only public road, and I could be arrested for trespass if I took any other. The men took the shorter and easier way along the C&O tracks, which paralleled the creek a little way above it. Suddenly, as we were bumping along, I heard a wild scream. I looked up at the tracks along which the miners were walking. I saw the men running, screaming as they went. I heard the whistle of bullets. I jumped out of the buggy and started to run up to the track. One of the boys screamed, "God, God, Mother, don't come! They'll kill—" "Stand still," I called. "Stand where you are. I'm coming." When I climbed up onto the tracks, I saw the boys huddled together, and around a little bend of the tracks, a machine gun and a group of gunmen. "Oh, Mother, don't come," they cried. "Let them kill us, not you." "I'm coming, and no one is going to get killed," said I. I walked up to the gunman and put my hand over the muzzle of the gun. Then I just looked at those gunmen, very quiet, and said nothing. I nodded my head for the miners to pass. "Take your hands off that gun, you hellcat," yelled a fellow called Mayfield, crouching like a tiger to spring at me. I kept my hand on the muzzle of the gun. "Sir," said I, "my class goes into the mines. They bring out the metal that makes this gun. This is my gun. My class melts the minerals in furnaces and roll the steel. They dig the coal that feeds furnaces. My class is not fighting you, not you. They are fighting with bare fists and empty stomachs the men who rob them and deprive their children of childhood. It is the hard-earned pay of the working class that your pay comes from. They aren't fighting you." Several of the gunmen dropped their eyes, but one fellow, this Mayfield, said, "I don't care a damn. I'm going to kill every one of them, and you too." I looked him full in the face. "Young man," said I want to tell you that if you shoot one bullet out of this gun at those men, if you touch one of my white hairs, that creek will run with blood, and yours will be the first to crimson it. I do not want to hear the screams of these men, nor to see the tears, nor feel the heartache of wives and little children. These boys have no guns. Let them pass." "So our blood is going to crimson the creek, is it?" snarled this Mayfield. I pointed to the high hills. "Up there in the mountain I have 500 miners. They are marching armed to the meeting I am going to address. If you start the shooting, they will finish the game." Mayfield's lips quivered like a tiger's deprived of its flesh. "Advance," he said to the miners. They came forward. I kept my hand on the gun. The miners were searched. There were no guns on them. They were allowed to pass. I went down the side of the hill to my buggy. The mule was chewing grass, and the little lad was making a willow whistle. I drove on. That night, I held my meeting. But there weren't any 500 armed men in the mountains. Just a few jackrabbits, perhaps, but I had scared that gang of cold-blooded hired murderers, and Red Warrior Camp was organized. The miners asked me to come up to Weinberg, a camp in the Creek District. Every road belonged to the coal company. Only the bed of the creek was a public road. At that time of the year, early spring, the water in the creek was high. I started for Weinberg, accompanied by a newspaperman named West of the Baltimore Sun. We walked along the railroad track. Again I met the gunmen with their revolvers and machine guns. Mayfield was there, too. "You can't walk here," he growled. "Private property." "You don't mean to say you're going to make that old lady walk that creek in the ice-cold water, do you?" said the reporter. "It's too damn good for her. She won't walk it," he laughed. "Won't I?" said I. I took off my shoes, rolled up my skirt, and walked the creek. At Weinberg, the miners, standing in the creek and on its edges, met me. With our feet in water, we held a meeting. Holding their shoes in their hands, their trousers rolled up, the men took the obligation to the union. I was very tired. A miner stepped up to me and asked me to come to his cabin and have a dish of tea. "Your house is on private property," yelled a gunman. "She cannot go." "I pay rent," he protested. "Private property, just the same. I'll arrest her for trespassing if she steps out of the creek." The struggle went on with increasing bitterness. The militia disarmed both gunmen and miners, but they were, of course, on the side of the Grand Dukes of the region. They forbade all meetings. They suspended every civil right. They became despotic. They arrested scores of miners, tried them in military court without jury, sentenced them to 10, 15 years in the Moundsville prison. I decided to call the attention of the national government to conditions in West Virginia. I borrowed $100 and went out and billed meetings in Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, and from these cities I came to Washington, D.C. I had already written to Congressman W.B. Wilson to get up a protest meeting. The meeting was held in the Armory, and it was packed. Senators, congressmen, secretaries, citizens. It is usual to have star orators at such meetings who use parlor phrases. Congressman Wilson told the audience that he hoped they would not get out of patience with me, for I might use some language which Washington was not accustomed to hear. I told the audience what things were happening in West Virginia, proceedings that were un-American. I told them about the suspension of civil liberty by the military, of the wholesale arrests, and the military sentences. This is the seat of a great Republican form of government. If such crimes against the citizens of the state of West Virginia go unrebuked by the government, I suggest that we take down the flag that stands for constitutional government and run up a banner saying, "This is the flag of the money oligarchy of America." The next day, by 12 o'clock, all the military prisoners but 2 were called down to the prison office and signed their own release. From Washington, I went to West Virginia to carry on my work. The day before I arrived, an operator named Quinn Morton, the sheriff of Kanawha County, Bonner Hill, deputies and guards, drove an armored train with Gatling guns through Holly Grove, the tent colony of the miners, while they were sleeping. Into the quiet tents of the workers,